I appreciate that you're going to clap for me, even though I'm from Colorado. I try to downplay that as much as I can, right? It's the C word. I certainly didn't move to Montana to change anything. I'm super passionate about first responders. I worked for large agencies in Colorado, from Colorado Springs all the way up to Fort Collins, running calls with police officers, firefighters, the whole gamut. So seen a lot, seen the impact that if we don't take care of each other and we don't take care of ourselves mentally, just what can happen. And I hate for anyone to arrive at retirement, what should be an incredible point in our life, broken and not capable of living a wonderful life. So we're going to talk about it today. First, though, I want to thank you all for everything that you do, your families do. I am so grateful that I have people that are willing to jump in and run towards the shit versus like myself, who's jumping out the window and running for high ground as fast as I can. So I'm so thankful. Up here is two of my daughters. They got to sit on an engine in Aurora, Colorado, and it's two of the four. So when you see my husband, you can give him your condolences because he has to live with 5 ladies. I'm a wife and mom, licensed marriage and family therapist. What that means is when you come to see me for therapy, I'm going to tell you how your parents fucked you up, and then we're going to work from there to fix you. No, it's just how I see the world. I see you in the system you live, its impact on you and your impact and influence on it. First responder certified. What that means is I've done special work or extracurricular work to become culturally competent. You guys, firefighters, law enforcement, EMS is a special group of humans. We don't have the normal human running towards danger, running to help people, willing to put their hands and bodies in situations that are very uncomfortable and sometimes, quite honestly, gross. So I have worked about 1,000 hours in a training course to become certified. I do a lot of continuing education to make sure that I'm staying up to date also on recent things that are the best practices for you guys. EMDR trained, really what that means is I'm trauma informed. So I'm very thoughtful about how trauma shows up in the world. I'm not one of those therapists that's gonna wave my magic wand and say you guys all have trauma. That's not the reality. We all go through adverse experiences that impact us, change us, but most of you are super resilient and get through it really well. I am licensed in Montana, Oregon, and Colorado. I continue to work with first responders in all 3 states. I do a lot of Zoom therapy with guys. I don't know if it's because they love me or they are just afraid to leave me because I might be mean. So we'll see how that goes. One piece about me, I grew up in a construction family, so I apologize. I've already dropped, several curse words. It's just the language that I know best. I know I find myself in some good company. I don't mean to offend you, though, so I'll do my best to keep it limited. So let's jump right in. As you start with new recruits, right, I call them the shiny, happy-eyed folks that come in so excited, so raring to go. I was talking to Verts just a second ago. They had a structure fire in Great Falls, and the guys are like, this is awesome, right? This is what I joined for. This is why I want to be a firefighter. They don't join to run the paramedic calls. Or I've been lucky enough to run calls with Great Falls Fire where we're running to a lady who sat down on the stairs to tie her shoe and couldn't get back up. And so let's call the fire department to come give us a hand to stand back up. That is not always what we've joined for. And so they have this open-minded perspective, super hopeful, and they're just ready to get going, and they're ready to jump into every situation they can get their hands on, which is lovely. We want that eager. We want that engagement from folks. However, as we start to move through the career of a firefighter, we start stacking things that happen in our life because you're not just firefighters. Your dads, your moms, your sisters, your brothers, your wives, your husbands, you have these roles that you play in life. And so now we're moving into a career field that takes a lot from you. We're going to get physical injuries. I know I have what I call a second dad. He was a career firefighter for 36 years in Colorado Springs. He's now gone through 4 knee surgeries. He just got done with his 3rd shoulder surgery, significant back issues. Anybody else? Right? It starts to wear on your body. And we've got to figure out our physical impacts our mental. So how do we get through that? We now are leaning or having to lean on other people at a consistent rate. We're going through critical incidents, whether it's a hard time for you or someone next to you, things just hit us differently. Things are hard. Maybe we've never seen those experiences before. I talk about my normie population, right? Those are all the normal people out there who live in naive land. They don't see the things, and we don't see the things until you start engaging in the business. And so it's all brand new and can be kind of off-putting. We have organizational stress. We have chief that comes and goes. We also have, right, maybe we're low-staffed, and so people are having to work more hours, overtime. We're getting to the burnout place. Anybody getting married when they're in the fire service? Maybe multiple marriages? Having a few kids? All good things, but all very stressful. Having kids is never easy. It adds a whole nother dynamic to life. And if you tell me no, I am gonna call bullshit. I love my kids, but they add a whole different dynamic to life. We have financial achievements. Maybe we're buying our first house, maybe we're building our first house, but we are achieving these goals not without stress though, not without some things that happen within our life. We go through death. We have our family members pass away. We might have coworkers pass away. That is a tremendous stress on folks. Divorce, we don't have any divorced humans in this room, I'm certain of it, but it happens. It doesn't happen just because of the job, but it does happen, and that adds a whole lot of stress. Illness, right, I can name every illness in the book, but COVID being the most recent and the most taxing on most people. That changed the way that we engage with each other, the way we understand the world, maybe even how we see politics and how we are engaged, right, how we're engaging in that process now. And then promotional testing, always super fun, super easy, not stressful at all. We don't study for that. We just show up and do it, right? Never. And so as we get these new recruits in and they're experiencing these things, it becomes very wearing and taxing. And I don't know about you, but as I was growing up, I wasn't ever encouraged to talk about my mental health or what was going on for me. Construction family is very similar to this. I got a lot of the, you'll get used to it. You'll get over it. Rub some dirt on it, right? When my grandfather died, so both my grandparents are of the greatest generation. My grandfather is a World War II vet, wonderful man, great wisdom, loved him, great connection. When he passed away, my grandma and grandpa had been married over 60 years. And I went and saw my grandma, and she, patted me on the back. Sorry, this is really hard. And she just looked at me and she goes, honey, it's time to pull our big girl panties up and just keep trucking. And this is 5 days after he had died. She'd lived more of her life with my grandfather than she did alone. But it is that generation, and possibly some of your generations, that we just keep going, we just keep trucking. And we believe that we can just step over it and step through it and manage it. However, you might be sitting here thinking, oh, I don't know, that really worked for me. But we're too afraid to say anything because of the fear of judgment. We're worried what that means about us. Does that mean I can't handle the job? Because I see all these other guys and girls that are out there and they're pushing hard and they're doing really well. Does that mean that call tells me I'm not capable of doing this? That I'm not fit to do it? Perceived weakness, you guys run towards the shit like on a constant basis. Actually, on my way up here today with my husband, we're right on the other side of Lincoln, and there was a huge accident. Some guy's truck rolled over, and thank God he was all right. He was out walking around, but who's going to that? I'm not stopping. I have no idea what to do. Can I keep everybody calm? Sure. What's that going to do for his bleeding? Absolutely nothing. So it's this perceived, I got to just step in, and I got to be strong, and I got to be able to handle this. And unfortunately, that's not always how it goes. The lack of awareness, maybe we don't understand how mental health works, how trauma works, how these things impact us, because there's no conversation about this. It's okay that you're going to be upset about one thing or the other, or that outside life things are bleeding into the firehouse, or fire department, sorry, I'm used to firehouses from Denver, or fire department is bleeding into home. That goes swimmingly, right? Those connections, we're always copacetic with our partners and our kids about having to miss holidays and those things. The lack of understanding. How many mental health calls, if you think about the calls that your department is running, how many of them are related to mental health or substance abuse? Hundreds, right? You can just start racking them up in your head. And when we're running calls on people who say, oh, I'm anxious and I'm depressed, it is the last thing that you want to think is happening for you, because you can't be like that person. Unfortunately, mental health is not a black or white. It's not a yes or no. It's not a right or wrong thing. It is a spectrum, right? That's depression here doesn't mean depression here, and how that shows up for people. But if we think that depression looks like crazy on the sidewalk, and we're having to deal with crazy, I don't want to be crazy. I love this job. I love what it provides for my family. And so that lack of understanding about what mental health, mental illness looks like. So let's talk about the cost of the stigma of not talking about this. So a recent survey, 27,000 departments, 71% said they had sleep disturbances. We got sleep disturbances in here? And I'm not just saying like, oh, last night I didn't get my full 8. I only got 7.5. I went to a training 2 weeks ago, and I had a gentleman come up to me. He'd been retired for 22 years. He has not been able to get 6 hours of sleep for 22 years. He gets 4 a night because of the things he's experienced, because of the damage to his body, the mental health things he's going through. 4 hours a night for 22 years after you've left the career? That's ludicrous. You're giving way too much. And we've got to start reaching out and taking care of and educating. There's all kinds of things we can do, and it doesn't have to be medication. Alcohol, over-the-counter med abuse. I read a statistic from Lexapol. Anybody familiar with Lexapol in here, or Fire One? I read a survey they had done recently of their members, and I think out of the 2,500 people that answered, quite a few, I think 80%, 85%, said that over the last month, they drank 10 days out of that last month. That means they drank to substantial amounts half the time that they were not at work. That's a lot. We're leaning into alcohol to cope with the stress and the overwhelming experiences that we have. And it doesn't just come from the firehouse, right? It comes from home. And how are we managing the two together? Depression and anxiety, those are ratcheting up. We are finding ourselves in an epidemic, right? The Surgeon General came out about a month or two ago and said that depression, anxiety, mental health is our next biggest issue in America because we're so disconnected from each other. We're not leaning in, we're not having conversation, we're not connecting like we used to. I am guilty of this just as much as anybody else, right? I do Zoom therapy. People don't even know that I have legs or a waist, right? I'm just this floating head on screen a lot of times because, right, I've got to reach out, I've got to stay with my people, but that's that lack of connection, it's that lack of engagement. Post-traumatic stress, one third of the population for IAFF met the criteria to be diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. I put PTSD on there simply because that's how it's labeled now in the real world, but it is an injury. That's something that I love to educate people on. Post-traumatic stress disorder sounds awful and terrible and like a stigma you gotta live with or a definition you gotta live with for the rest of your life. I like to think about it as post-traumatic stress injury because this is something that we are healing from, that we are capable of moving on from and continuing to have a great life. It doesn't mean that we have to be saddled with it forever. Suicide, 100 to 200 a year. That's ludicrous. That has to stop. We have to be showing up for each other in very different ways. We have to be able to step into that really uncomfortable place with knowledge and education and just friendship. It might not be about the fire service. It might be about the awful divorce they're going through and the kids they're going to lose time with. It's a horrible place to be, and if I don't have to do it alone, what a much better place. And then the divorce rate, 60 to 75% divorce rate. Divorces are super easy, right? We just sign the thing and off we go, and assets are easily split, and kids go back and forth. No, it's awful and painful. No one ever gets into that serious commitment for life thinking, yeah, 10 years sounds good, we'll get divorced and separate our assets. Hope it all goes well. No. But some of you have had really fantastic marriages. Some of you have learned how to manage those barriers and those hurdles together, and why wouldn't we be sharing that information with one another? Now let's look at the cost to the departments that mental health can have. So continuous call-outs, sick time, vacation time. If you have someone who isn't able to function because they've got something going on at home or they're not doing well in the fire service, they're going to call out. They're going to take all their sick time right at the front. And now we've got to have people coming in to step in for them, help out. Well, now we're asking for burnout from those people who are doing well, who are coping well, and they're not having time to do self-care, be with their family. So it's just this horrific revolving cycle. Injuries on and off the job. When I can't stay focused and I can't be in my job, I no doubt will say and do some things that don't help, aren't helpful. You guys deal with lives. And so if we're making, right, if we're doing things that cost harm to another firefighter, self, now we're on light duty. Now what happens? Well, now we've got to have more guys coming in, doing the shift work, being on the floor, and that also encourages more burnout. The ability to attract and retain good people. I do not mean this next statement as a negative, but my millennials tend to appreciate mental health or behavioral health support. And they start going around, and this is definitely a trend, they're going around to departments asking, is that part of the benefit package? What does it look like for me as the firefighter to get that mental health support? But also, what does it look like for my family to get that support, to be part of that community? And then we're looking at admin leave. We got guys maybe who show up, maybe not drunk, but not sober for sure. Or we've got people who are out in the street fighting. We're not hitting each other, but it's not looking good. And it certainly doesn't look good on the department. So now we've got to put them on admin leave. That costs the department even more money because now we got to pay you, and I've got to pay somebody double time, overtime, whatever that looks like to come in and fill in for you, and there's more burnout. We're asking a lot of our human resource. So I don't want to say that you guys have not worked hard to address this. That would be really rude and disrespectful. You've had a good start. We've started with SISM and debriefs. I won't throw any department under the bus, but I do know of a department that does not do the SISM debriefs. They refuse because it's not been effective for their people. SISM was created in 1983 by two doctors who wrote an article. That's how this started. Here's the checkpoints, do these things, boom, 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 and hope it all goes well for you. How does that feel? It's a terrible fucking feeling. I don't want to be a box to be checked. I'm a human who had a real experience in this incident, and I want that to be acknowledged. I want to know that what I'm experiencing is okay, or if I'm not okay, I need someone to help me with that. But I don't want to walk into this room and have, right, go around and say your name, what you did, right, and we're patted on the head, and the next step, and the next step. That feels awful. It's really, you guys are very good, and you're very educated in how to communicate, how to gain trust with each other. CIT, so critical incident training, when we're engaging with folks who are mentally ill, maybe substance abuse. It's not up to you to identify what we're actually dealing with, but how we engage with them. Because someone who shows up as psychotic can also show up as someone who's on meth. Really hard. And how do you talk to those people? How do you know what sets them off and what doesn't? So it's really great that we're encouraging fire departments to have this training. Just trainings overall. Looked at the IAFF, and I know they've partnered with Lexapol and some other groups to get some training in there. It's all online, which, right, that's the day and age we're in. And so encouraging people to get educated. It's really helpful. I am a big fan of G.I. Joe from the 80s. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. Now we know the information, and what are we going to go do with it? But I think we have to step up our training. We really have to start talking about harder topics and making it less uncomfortable. Oh, sorry. And then hot washes. It's what I know from Denver. It's what they would call when guys get around after a call, the engine rolls in, we've gotten all the stuff done, we grab a cup of coffee and we just sit around and we chat about how that call went. Not from a tactical perspective. We can do that all day long, and you guys do that really well, and you probably beat yourselves to death with a little tactical review. No, a hot wash is like, how was that for you? Maybe that was your first car accident. Maybe that was your first structure fire. Whatever that looks like, how did that go for you? And we're engaging and we're encouraging each other to talk about it. I will give my Great Falls Fire Department a huge pat on the back for that. I've been extremely impressed with their ability to show up for each other in really terrible moments. And let's just talk about it. We don't have to box check. We don't have anything to do. Let's just talk about how it went. And if it's fine, great, we're fine. Let's go do some other stuff. Let's go make fun of the probie, right? Whatever that looks like. So behavioral health programs is one of the ways the IAFF has suggested we start getting ahead of this stigma and how we start addressing it. They call them behavioral health programs. which is an all-encompassing process of education, therapy, trainings, anything like that. I call them wellness programs. And we have 3 stoplights, or 3 lights. We like to call them proactive, in-moment, and reactive. I will give you a quick statistic. The National Safety Council has a calculator. I'm happy to provide this to you. Chief Jones could probably provide it to you as well. That you'll go in, you'll pop in where the department is, you'll pop in how many members you have, and it runs the statistic for you that if you, for every dollar that you put towards a wellness program, you save $5 on the other end, right? We're saving that burnout. We're saving those people from having to be on admin leave. Or we have a process that addresses it quicker and faster so that we don't have these tag-alongs that are just draining cash from you. So let's talk about what a proactive response looks like. Pre-employment evals, I don't do those. That is not my jam. I actually have a partner in business. We run Montana First Responder Psychological Services. It is a mouthful. She does a lot of the pre-employment evals. She and I actually met in Denver. She's a Great Falls native, so right, I have my adjacent Montana native. I have the blessing to be here. But she does a lot of the pre-employment evals. We want to start with good, healthy people. Not everybody, right? We're not asking that everybody's going to have good coping skills and able to manage all the things. Because like I said, how do they even know what they're getting into? But we want to start with a really solid foundation of humans coming into the business. Then we look at peer support team. This is not CISM. CISM is not interchangeable with peer support. I look at peer support as a whole encompassing person. I don't just, right, I'm not just a therapist. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I do all these other things, and in all these other things, I might have stressors and work is really good. I need friends, I need people to surround me that can talk to me about how hard marriage can be, how hard raising 4 girls can be, and not just judge me for it, or me feel like I'm just a terrible mother and I should never talk about what kind of mothering I am. So peer support, we look at the whole person. We want to engage and we want to train our peer supporters to be able to sit with that. You're not a therapist, you're not going to make it all better, but oftentimes it is a force multiplier. Everything is going to be okay. We can stop and we can get help. We can make that okay as well as a peer. If I walk into a room and people know I'm a therapist, it's fascinating how fast the room will clear, or what they'll say to me or what they won't say to me. But if I can have someone introduce me and say, she's super normal, she'll curse with you, she'll go get a beer with you, just know that I'm normal and I'm not waving my incense and walking in my Birkenstocks, that goes a long way for people trusting and wanting to get in and get help. And I don't have anything against Birkenstocks, I do own them. But family and spouse support. This is a big, I would say another thing that's coming up in the world is getting family and spouse support. Shift work is not easy. When we're on 24 or 48 hours, you are single parenting it. And if we don't have a community, that gets really tough. I work with law enforcement and fire in Great Falls that come in new. Maybe they're bringing a family with them, maybe they're not. But if you don't have a community that can come in and support you for that 24 or 48 hours, you feel very lonely and isolated. And if it's not a happy spouse, it is not a happy house. And now again, we're asking our firefighters to come in after they've had maybe 4 days off, which should be great and should be restful, but it wasn't because the spouse at home is really struggling and we're fighting consistently. We're not getting good rest. Kids are unhappy. Spouse is threatening to leave. And so we're really working hard to save our marriage. And then we're looking at the firehouse as our chance to slow down and rest. Yikes. Wellness checks. I look at this as twofold. Wellness checks also, we go in and my partner and I would meet with individuals, right? Everybody's mandated to meet with us. It's a chance for me to educate. I have a pamphlet that I hand out. We talk about baseline behaviors, sleep, eat, and exercise. We'll talk about some other things. I give a lot of resources. I get a lot of guys that come in and they're like, I don't really want to be here. I don't really want to talk to you. Fair. What do you want to talk about? I mean, I'll talk about fishing. I'll talk about football. I'll talk about anything they want to talk about because it also gives me a chance to just have them see that therapists are normal. Again, it's removing the stigma from mental health. But it also, from that other side, I'm hearing what's going on for them. I'm getting the buzz through the fire department, right, or the floor guys, and I get to then report back to our chain of command and say, I'm not going to tell you who told me what, but here are the common denominators. Here are the things that your people are really struggling with. Maybe I have a solution, or maybe I don't, but I'm happy to help you figure out a solution. It is ears and eyes in those bigger groups that I can then help you guys facilitate changes that would be really helpful. Therapy is a given. I would love to say that we can get through all the terrible things that you guys experience with a Coke and a smile. That's not how it works. Sometimes we really do need to do some hard work and work through it, but everything, in my opinion, firefighters, law enforcement are capable of getting through. I've never seen anyone say, oh, it's just too hard for me. It is the wonderful thing I love about the population is you're extremely strong and resilient, and it's okay when I need to ask for a little help. Doesn't mean you're not strong. It takes even more guts to do it. And then department-wide trainings. This is just a few that we list. We have a bajillion different trainings we can do. We can also, I would say anything in a wellness program, you want to have dynamic. So if we have something going on in the department, maybe alcohol use is up a little bit, we come in and we do a 15-minute training. It doesn't have to be days, months of training, nothing like that. It is a quick shot. Let's give you the digestible information and walk away and let you ask questions. Then we have in the moment. So this is your critical incident response. When we have those really terrible experiences that happen, none of us like to think about, but we just can't get through it, you'll want a clinician who is culturally competent to show up and just talk and sit. We don't have to talk about the incident, but you're there, just showing up. I'm here to support you. I'm here to talk about the stuff, or I'm just here to laugh. Your peer support group also. Coming around those folks and supporting them, coming with really good tools. That process is always changing and it's very dynamic, best practices. I always like to encourage my peer support group in Great Falls, here's how we can do something different. Here's how this could be or look different. Post-critical incident interviews. I don't do a lot of these for fire departments, I've done just a handful. But after a really serious incident, maybe someone is just not right and they've asked for a few days off. Fair enough, let's give you some space. And they're just, right, everybody's kind of watching them saying, they just don't look right. Something is off, they don't seem to be okay. When I do post-critical incident interviews, I get a chance to meet with them and ask them the questions. What is actually going on for you? What does sleep and exercise look like? How are we talking about this? What's support look like? How are we coping? Any of those questions, and they get to look at me and say, I am just not ready to return. I can't get a good night's sleep. My wife is freaking out, is one I hear often, unfortunately. My kids have really struggled with me going back to work, so I just need a little bit more time off. Well, as a clinician, I'm trusted that I'm gonna take that liability on and go to the, right, I'm gonna give a piece of paper to that person. They get to hand it to their chief and say, I'm just, right, they don't think I'm ready to return. Not because they're not well or mentally unstable, but because they are telling me I can't do it right now. But then it's also up to me, what do we need to do to get you back to the place where you're either gonna go to work or we're gonna retire or quit. And that's a hard conversation for a lot of folks to have, but what better place to do it in the vulnerable open space with somebody who can't share that information with anyone else. Debriefs, we all know what those look like. I run what I call culturally competent debriefs. I don't go through the CISM checklist exactly. I am CISM certified so that if I have to check that box, I can do so. But what I like to do is be very open. I run it and I let everybody else speak. I'm not the center of attention, you guys are. And I think it's really important that we start to look at how that process goes, because what's most important in debriefs is validation. Validation that what you're going through is really normal. Validation that that experience isn't super crazy. I look at the knowledge and wisdom in this room and think, gosh, you guys have probably seen it all. And for somebody who's just stepping on the line and trying this, they don't know what's normal and what's not. So for you guys to sit there and say, yeah, totally normal, or your more established folks to tell them it's gonna be okay, what a reassurance that can be. And then employee consultation. Both my partner and I offer this. If you guys aren't sure, right, we have a person that's walking a very fine line, maybe their customer service skills aren't on point, they seem to be struggling with drinking, they seem to be struggling with some other pieces. What can I do for them? What does this look like? My partner and I do a lot of reading, a lot of research with the ADA, trying to figure out how do we best support you and do the right thing for that employee to help them keep their job. Reactive, so this is, of course, we're coming around the backside, having to clean up something that isn't working well, advanced skills or performance improvement plans. When I do advanced skills, it's because that individual has been directed to come to me, not because we're doing therapy. It's no chief's job to say, you deserve therapy, right? You have to do therapy. But it is to work on maybe some personal skills, some coping skills, something like that that's happening in their life. They come visit with me for 3 sessions. I have goals set by the department saying this is what we want them to be able to achieve or stop doing by the time they come back to work. And so this is what we're encouraging folks to have so that we have some sort of resort mandated. Mandated therapy, I can tell you in all of my years it's not happened except for the next thing down, fit for duty evaluations. That is also not my jam. That is my partner in crime's jam. She does all of those. She and I worked in Denver, and we've done some here as well. When someone is found unfit, it doesn't mean they can't return to the job at some point. It just means that they need to do a little bit more work on themselves and find that next footing to be better and figure out life in a different direction. That's where mandated therapy comes in, so they kind of play off really well together. In summary, a wellness program supports department leadership, creates a proactive approach to normalize emotional, physical, personal experiences. I love the quote at the bottom by Jocko Willink. If folks aren't well physically, mentally, or with family, how can they perform in a high regard? We're asking a lot for 24 to 48 hours of our folks. Sometimes it's really slow, sometimes it's really fast. We can't always determine that. And so we're encouraging our people to really take care of themselves and talk about what's going on for them rather than hide from it, rather than pretend that stigma doesn't exist. So wellness program, whether it be with myself and my partner, or you reach out to me and say, hey, you're on the other side of Egypt from us, what can we do? I'd love to have that consultation. I'd love to have that opportunity to say, here's what you could put together. I'll help you find a culturally competent clinician. We'll do whatever we can to support that because it's really important that we continue to encourage health and wellness for our folks. I've talked a lot. Questions? I'll take any of them. Don't be shy. Ooh. I do. I think it was our basic platform. It is backed by some science, but as we look at research and how effective they are, we find that it's less effective than it ever has been. And that's just first responder population. I think about the hurricanes, all the terrible stuff happening down south. You're going to walk into a community and do a debrief for those folks, what I call my normies. That's going to be really effective for them. But for our first responder population, you guys are way too smart. You will outthink me in a moment if I'm trying to pull one over on you. And that's not what it should be about. It should just be really about authentic experience. And I think that's where it comes from. Sorry, you had a question. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Right. Right. It is. And if you think about how dynamic it can be, if you go into a healthier department, healthier work environment, where you're encouraged to share that information, where that seems normalized to have the conversations, then debriefs, whether it's a checkbox, right, just a CISM certified process, it's great. Because then it's happening the way it should. But it doesn't always occur that way. We don't always have the healthiest of situations. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, EMDR. Yep, so it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I'm trained in it. If it's up to me to say, it's a magic wand. I have seen some incredible results from it. I'll share a quick story. I had a firefighter, South Metro in Colorado, He'd been a paramedic for them, gosh, I want to say 25, 30 years, somewhere in there. So he'd seen his fair share of growth in South Metro, and then also as Colorado has grown, you guys see it on the news, the crazy things that happen down there. He was just at the point of burnout and not able to sleep, using alcohol to try and get some sleep, which when we add alcohol to our system, we're not getting any sleep. That sugar runs in our body, and now we're getting wicked nightmares, wicked dreams. It just doesn't settle in well for us. So he came in to me after being mandated to come see me for advanced skills. We worked on some customer service skills because he got really snappy. He was unloading what they call a client from the back of the van, the ambulance, and another paramedic that he was working with made a comment to him, like, hey, we should try this or do this differently. And he's like, you do you, boo-boo. Oh, that was not good, because now it's in front of all the ER staff, the whole thing. It was like his 5th offense. So he had to come in and see me, and what we found was there was what we call cumulative trauma. It's called a stacking effect of all the experiences he'd been through that he just couldn't shake. We weren't getting enough sleep to process through it. So we came in, we picked a few of those. He retired. He decided, I'm done, and now he lives a very lovely life in Hawaii and sends me shitty little emails with pictures of the beach, and it's bullshit. But he's happy, and it's amazing. EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. I can give you more. We can chat. Yeah, we can chat on the side about what it is. It's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I highly encourage it. When we get people coming in the office to test for, do their pre-employment eval, I'm walking in, right? I've got a gajillion bags with me, and I introduce myself, and I offer, come in and chat with me. If it's not me, find someone else. I've worked with the fire department in Great Falls. Let's vet some clinicians. It doesn't have to be me. I'm not here to get paid. I'm here to get people help. And really good support. So I think it's highly encourageable to do that, whether they want to take you up on it, right? We know how kids are. We were kids. I can do it. I'll do it on my own. But making it available as often as possible from the very start. I don't think there's a benefit to mandating therapy unless it's, right, we're later on down the road. If you mandate them to come see me, it already creates that piece about me that I'm connected to command staff. And so now they think they've got to come see me because I'm going to run around to the chief and tell them what I'm hearing. Absolutely not. I will throw down with the chief before I will share anything that's shared with me. But, right, you guys get to hear that. People don't always trust you that way. If they've had a bad experience or they don't feel like it's a trustworthy environment, we're just forcing something on them and we're creating a bigger gap to jump. So mandating it or requiring it, I don't think is helpful. Other questions? Yeah. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. 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 I don't think there's any one right path, and I don't think for every department, it is going to be different. It depends on where you are and the culture that you have, one, in your community, and two, at your department. So it's lovely that you have all those things. I can imagine they feel overwhelmed by, now what choice do I choose, right? There's research around Baskin-Robbins 31 flavors. If somebody walks in and they've got 31 flavors to choose from, do you know which two they choose the most? Chocolate and vanilla, every frickin' time. Because if it's decision overload, I don't know what's best for me. I already feel, so now I'm gonna have to choose what therapy, what thing is gonna do right for me. I think it's more of the perspective, the G.I. Joe perspective. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. So here's the trainings. I don't know how much training you guys do on suicide, on trauma. Here's the impacts it has on you guys. And here's all the resources you have. Figure it out. If you need some help, go to a peer supporter. But we can only do so much. It's similar to parenting. I hate to dwindle it down and make it seem that small. But if we give our kids everything in the world, when will they do it for themselves? They won't. And so we kind of have to manage that. That's when I use wellness checks. So I'm coming in as a third party. I have no affiliation technically to the department. And I get to ask the questions. What would you like to see? What would be a better fit for you? Not that you guys didn't do a great job in asking them, but as command staff, how often are they going to be honest with you? Yeah. 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 Is there more training? Is there other things they want to know about? Yeah. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think, bravo for trying the attempt. There's nothing wrong with a well-intentioned intent. Yeah. Other questions, thoughts? Yeah. Suicides? Mm-hmm. No, our veteran population, one veteran dies a day from suicide, at least. Divorce rate, I don't have that statistic in front of me. You'd think I would as a marriage and family therapist, but yeah, suicide rate is incredible for our veterans. And then also when we're looking at post-traumatic stress, mental health, all of those things, they're off the charts. Yeah, that's a whole nother soapbox for me to get on. Yeah. 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 Knowing what you do. I think there's a division we create in ourselves. I call it, right, resting firefighter face or my resting cop face. I have a resting therapy face. It's those things that we take it in because we've had experiences and we just hold on to the facts of it. We don't get emotionally involved. There are situations though, right, where that mask slips down and we are emotionally touched by those things. The longer you're in the business, and if you've had good coping skills, you learn to cope with those things and not see them the way other people would if they're seeing those things for the first time. So there's a little bit of balance there. Now, if we're going home and we are not engaging with our family and we're not having fun and we're not laughing and maybe we're not crying at the sad movies, I don't know, I don't cry at sad movies, but we're not crying or we're not being emotional about the things we normally would, that's a whole nother conversation. That means we have basically just shut down. We're numbing everything out. I call it the zoned out method. We just kind of zone out and we check out of life. We don't engage and we don't intentionally show up as us. So it's kind of two different perspectives there. But I think you should come see me. I think you've got problems. Yeah. Yeah. I love it for financial advice, maybe, right, we're looking for physical health advice, those kind of things. I'm going to tell you one of my soapbox things is getting a culturally competent clinician. In the EAP programs that are most often provided, those EAP therapists are, I don't mean to be rude and offend anyone when I say this, most of those clinicians are just starting out in their career. EAPs are what are going to accept them. Some of them are not even licensed yet. They're candidates for licensure. And so they haven't experienced, right, what you guys have to say to the depths that you're going to say it. Even if it's family stuff or children's stuff, those kind of things, they're not always really skilled at some of those experiences. So I hesitate to say that the EAPs or these services that we're engaging with that don't have culturally competent clinicians. I've had more than my fair share of first responders come to me and say, you were my last stop because the last clinician I went to cried when I shared my story. Hard stop. So now I've got to shut myself down and I've got to take care of you, clinician, because that was too much for you to hear. That's just insulting. Yeah. So I think there's some balance to be had when we're going to provide great services. Yeah, financially plan all day long. I think that's beautiful. And we should really be encouraging people to do that. Family plan, house, those things, all those resources are great. When it comes to therapy, we got to be very thoughtful. Yeah, absolutely. Other questions, comments? I'll take your feedback. I can take it. Things you wished I would have talked about. Wow, I covered it all? Or we're just scared? Okay. Well, I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for having me. I really want to say thank you to Chief Jones. He and I had a wonderful first meeting on the truck floor. I won't tell you what he was talking about, but I probably made him very embarrassed when I turned the corner and it's a chick that he doesn't know. It was awesome, but I'm so thankful to him. I'm so grateful that he gave me this opportunity. Thank you. All right, have a great day.